Have you ever smiled in front of everyone, said that you were fine, and then quietly struggled with fear the moment you were alone? Have you ever gone to bed exhausted, hoping that your mind would finally become quiet, only to find yourself thinking about tomorrow, about your family, your career, your money, your health, or the possibility of losing someone you love? Maybe nothing is actually happening right now, yet your heart feels restless, your chest feels heavy, and your mind keeps creating frightening possibilities. What if I fail? What if I lose my job? What if the person I love leaves me? What if something happens to my family? What if my future does not unfold the way I imagined? And perhaps the most painful question is this: what if I am never able to escape this feeling? If you have ever experienced this, listen carefully, because there is something you need to understand. You are not weak. You are not broken. And you are not alone. Fear is one of the oldest struggles of the human mind. But according to the deeper spiritual vision associated with Paramahansa Yogananda, fear becomes stronger when we forget our deeper nature and become completely identified with the changing world around us. We begin to believe that our security depends entirely on our circumstances, our relationships, our possessions, our success, and our future. And because all of these things can change, the mind becomes afraid of losing them. But what if there is something within you that cannot be shaken by every change in life? What if peace does not come from controlling everything that happens outside you, but from discovering a deeper stillness within you? Today, we are going to explore how fear is born, why anxiety repeatedly returns, how our inner patterns influence our reactions, and most importantly, how you can begin transforming fear into courage, awareness, faith, and inner peace. Most people try to get rid of fear without ever asking where that fear is coming from. We notice the racing heart, the restless thoughts, the sleepless nights, the constant need for reassurance, and we simply want it all to stop. But what if the fear we see on the surface is only a small part of a much deeper problem? Imagine a man named Arun. He has a stable job, a loving family, a comfortable home, and enough money to live his life peacefully. From the outside, there seems to be nothing wrong. But every night, when the world becomes quiet and he is alone with his thoughts, a strange fear begins to rise inside him. He checks his phone again and again. He looks at his bank balance. He thinks about tomorrow's work. He worries about his health. Then his mind asks, what if something goes wrong? What if I lose my job? What if my family needs me and I cannot help them? What if everything I have built suddenly disappears? Nothing has actually happened, but Arun is already suffering from a future that exists only in his imagination. And this is something many of us experience without realizing it. Sometimes anxiety is not really saying that something terrible is happening right now. It is saying, I am afraid that I will not be able to handle what might happen. That is the hidden problem beneath many fears. We are not always afraid of losing a job. Sometimes we are afraid that losing the job will make us feel worthless. We are not always afraid of being alone. Sometimes we are afraid that without another person's love, we will not feel complete. We are not always afraid of failure itself. Sometimes we are afraid that failure will prove that we are not good enough. So the spiritual seeker begins with a very simple but powerful question: what am I actually afraid of losing? Is it my money, my position, my relationship, my reputation, or the image I have created of myself? When we honestly look within, we may discover that fear is often protecting an identity that was never meant to be permanent. And this is where the journey toward inner freedom begins. Instead of immediately running away from fear, pause for a moment and listen to it. Ask what it is trying to tell you. Because when you understand the fear beneath the fear, you begin to discover that you are much deeper than the thoughts that frighten you. Why does fear appear even when nothing dangerous is happening around us? Why can a person sit safely in their room, surrounded by everything they need, and still feel as though something terrible is about to happen? To understand this, we have to look at both the mind and the deeper spiritual nature of our experience. Fear itself is not the enemy. In many situations, fear is a natural response designed to protect us. When there is real danger, the body becomes alert, the heart beats faster, the breathing changes, and the mind prepares us to respond. This is part of being human. But the difficulty begins when the mind starts creating danger even when there is no immediate danger in the present moment. You remember something painful from yesterday, and suddenly your body reacts as though it is happening again. You imagine losing your job tomorrow, and your heart begins to race today. You think about someone leaving you, and you experience the pain of separation before anything has actually happened. The mind has the extraordinary ability to travel into the past and future, but when it does this without awareness, it can create suffering in the present. Imagine a calm lake. When the wind is strong, the surface becomes covered with waves, and it becomes difficult to see the reflection clearly. But when the wind becomes still, the water becomes quiet, and the reflection becomes clear. In a similar way, when our thoughts are constantly moving through fear, comparison, memories, expectations, and imagined possibilities, we lose contact with the quiet awareness beneath those thoughts. We begin to believe, I am my fear. I am my anxiety. I am my thoughts. But a deeper spiritual understanding invites us to look again. If you can observe your thoughts, then perhaps you are not the thoughts themselves. If you can notice fear moving through your mind, then perhaps there is a deeper awareness within you that can witness that fear without becoming completely controlled by it. This small shift in perspective can be profoundly powerful. Instead of saying, I am afraid, you can gently recognize, fear is moving through me right now. Instead of saying, I am an anxious person, you can say, an anxious thought has appeared in my mind. You are not denying the feeling. You are simply creating space around it. And within that space, you can begin to breathe, observe, understand, and choose your response. This is one of the first steps toward inner freedom. The goal is not to force the mind to become silent, but to gradually discover the stillness that already exists beneath the noise. As you learn to return to that inner stillness through prayer, meditation, conscious breathing, and present moment awareness, fear may still visit you, but it no longer has to control your entire life. Sometimes we look at our fears and ask ourselves, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep reacting in the same way? Why do I always expect the worst, even when life gives me reasons to trust? Spiritual teachings often speak about karma, destiny, and the patterns created by our past actions and thoughts. But karma does not have to be understood as punishment. A more helpful way to understand it is as a movement of cause and effect, a pattern that becomes stronger when we repeatedly think, feel, and act in the same way. Every time you respond to life with fear, the mind learns that fear is the safest response. Every time you expect rejection, your mind becomes more sensitive to signs of rejection. Every time you tell yourself, something will go wrong, the mind begins searching for evidence that something is wrong. Slowly, a thought becomes a habit becomes a pattern, and the pattern begins to influence the way you experience your life. Imagine a river flowing through the same path for many years. Because the water has repeatedly traveled through that channel, the path becomes deeper and easier for the water to follow. Our mental patterns can work in a similar way. Perhaps you grew up hearing that the world is dangerous. Perhaps you were criticized whenever you made a mistake. Perhaps someone you trusted disappointed you deeply. Perhaps you experienced failure, rejection, or loss, and your mind decided that it must always remain prepared for pain. Years later, the original situation may be gone, but the pattern can still remain. Someone may simply say, "We need to talk," and suddenly your heart begins to race because your mind remembers earlier experiences of criticism or rejection. The present moment may be safe, but an old emotional pattern is reacting as though the past is happening again. This is why awareness is so important. Before you react, pause and ask yourself, is this fear coming from what is happening right now, or is something from my past influencing the way I see this moment? That question creates space between the old pattern and your present choice. And that space is powerful. Your past may influence you, but it does not have to control you. Your karma may create tendencies, but tendencies are not a prison. Every conscious thought, every wise action, every moment of patience, prayer, meditation, forgiveness, and self-awareness can begin creating a new direction. You may not be able to change everything that happened yesterday, but you can change the way you meet today. And perhaps this is one of the deepest lessons about destiny. Destiny may bring certain circumstances to your door, but your consciousness determines how you enter the room. The moment you become aware of an old pattern, you are no longer completely trapped inside it. You have begun to awaken. Fear does not always arrive as a sudden wave of panic. Sometimes it hides behind ordinary behaviors that we have learned to accept as part of our personality. Sometimes fear looks like overthinking, sometimes it looks like perfectionism, sometimes it looks like anger, and sometimes it looks like the constant need to control everything around us. You may think you are simply being careful, but perhaps deep inside you are afraid of what will happen if things do not go according to your plan. You may constantly check your phone because you are afraid someone will stop caring about you. You may repeatedly check your bank account because you are afraid that one day you will not have enough. You may avoid a new opportunity because you are afraid that failure will make you feel ashamed. You may remain silent in a meeting because you are afraid people will judge your ideas. You may even say, "I don't care," when deep inside you care more than anyone realizes. Consider someone who receives an important opportunity at work. It could improve their career, but instead of feeling excited, their mind immediately begins asking, "What if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I make a mistake?" The opportunity is real, but the fear becomes stronger than the possibility. So they never begin. Months later, they may realize that they were not defeated by failure. They were defeated by the fear of experiencing failure. Another person may deeply love someone, but instead of enjoying that relationship, they constantly worry, "What if this person leaves me?" They check messages, seek reassurance, become possessive, and slowly create tension in the relationship. Fear tells them, "I must control this person so I never lose them." But love says, "I am grateful for your presence, and I will allow our relationship to grow with trust and respect." There is another common fear, the fear of money and security. A person may have enough today, but the mind keeps asking, "What if I become poor tomorrow?" They earn more, but then they become afraid of losing what they have gained. The numbers change, but the fear remains. And then there is the fear of other people's opinions. You want to speak honestly, follow your dream, change your career, or begin something meaningful, but you hear an invisible question inside your mind, "What will people think?" Slowly, you begin living according to other people's expectations instead of your own deeper values. So pause and observe yourself gently. Ask, where does fear appear in my life? Does it appear as overthinking? Avoidance? Anger? Jealousy? Perfectionism? Constant checking? The moment you recognize the disguise, you can begin working with the real emotion underneath it. Fear becomes easier to transform when you stop judging yourself for having it and start becoming curious about why it is there. Awareness is the beginning of change, because what you can clearly see within yourself, you can gradually learn to respond to with wisdom. Now we come to the most important question: what should you do when fear appears? When your heart begins to race, when your thoughts become overwhelming, and when your mind starts imagining everything that could go wrong, the first thing you need to understand is this: you do not have to fight fear with more fear. You do not have to become angry with yourself for feeling anxious, and you do not have to force your mind to become silent immediately. Instead, pause and become aware. Take a slow, gentle breath and bring your attention back to the present moment. Feel the air entering your body and leaving it. Notice where tension is present without judging yourself. Then quietly say to yourself, right now, I am here. I do not need to solve tomorrow in this moment. This simple practice can create a small space between you and the fearful story inside your mind. Then ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Try to put the fear into words. Perhaps you are afraid of losing your job. Perhaps you are afraid of being rejected. Perhaps you are afraid that someone you love will leave. Once you name the fear, ask another question, what is actually happening right now? You may discover that the situation is not as dangerous as your imagination suggested. This does not mean ignoring real problems. It means separating the facts of the present from the stories created by fear. Then replace the question, what if everything goes wrong? With a wiser question, if something difficult happens, how can I respond with courage and intelligence? This changes your position from helplessness to responsibility. You may not control every event, but you can develop the strength to meet each event wisely. Make time for daily stillness through prayer, meditation, conscious breathing, or quiet reflection. You do not need to begin with an hour. Even a few sincere minutes each day can teach the mind to return to peace. When fear says, I cannot handle this, gently answer, I will take one step at a time. When fear says, I am alone, remind yourself, I can return to the quiet awareness within me and seek support from people I trust. And remember that spirituality does not mean ignoring practical responsibilities. If you are worried about money, create a realistic plan. If you are concerned about your physical or mental well-being, seek appropriate professional support. If a conversation is troubling you, prepare for it rather than endlessly imagining it. Faith and action can walk together. Pray for strength and then take the next wise step. You do not need to defeat fear in one dramatic moment. Healing often happens through many small moments of awareness, courage, patience, and trust. Each time you pause instead of reacting, each time you breathe instead of panicking, each time you choose wisdom instead of an old fearful pattern, you are teaching your mind something new. Slowly, fear may still visit you, but it no longer needs to decide where your life will go. Now we come to the deepest part of this journey. After understanding fear, its roots, its patterns, and the ways we can respond to it, we must ask a much deeper question: why are we afraid in the first place? One answer is that we become deeply attached to things that are constantly changing. We hold tightly to our body, our relationships, our possessions, our career, our reputation, our plans, and our image of who we believe we are. We quietly tell ourselves, this must happen. This person must stay. I must succeed. I must never fail. My life must go according to my plan. But life does not promise us complete control. Everything in the outer world changes. Our body changes, our relationships change, our career changes, our financial situation changes, and even our thoughts change from one moment to another. If our peace depends entirely on things that can change, then our peace will always feel threatened. But spiritual wisdom invites us to look deeper and ask, is there something within me that remains present while all these things are changing? Think about your own life. You were once a child, then you became an adult. Your body changed, your appearance changed, your opinions changed, your responsibilities changed, and your circumstances changed. Yet throughout all these stages, there has been a sense of awareness within you that has witnessed the journey. You have experienced thousands of thoughts, emotions, successes, disappointments, beginnings, and endings, but something within you has continued to observe them. This is the doorway to a deeper spiritual understanding. The teachings associated with Paramahansa Yogananda point the seeker toward the deeper self, the soul, and the awareness of our divine nature beyond the temporary personality. From this perspective, fear does not have to disappear before you can become peaceful. You can experience fear and still remain aware. You can experience uncertainty and still choose faith. You can experience pain and still choose wisdom. You can experience loss and still remember that your deepest identity is not limited to the things you possess. Imagine a small candle burning inside a dark room. The candle does not fight the darkness. It does not argue with it. It simply gives light. In the same way, you do not have to fight every fearful thought that enters your mind. Bring awareness to it. You do not have to hate your anxiety. Bring compassion to it. You do not need to know exactly what tomorrow will bring. You only need enough wisdom to take the next right step. Fear says, control everything, or you will not be safe. Inner wisdom says, live sincerely, act wisely, and trust the deeper journey. Perhaps true fearlessness is not becoming a person who never feels fear. Perhaps it is becoming a person who can feel fear without allowing fear to become the master of their consciousness. And when you begin to discover that quiet center within yourself, you realize something beautiful. The storm may still exist around you, but it no longer has to become the storm within you. That is the beginning of spiritual awakening. That is the beginning of inner freedom. And now, as we come to the end of this journey, take a moment to become completely still. Wherever you are right now, allow yourself to take one slow, gentle breath, and let your attention return to this present moment. You have listened to the deeper nature of fear, anxiety, attachment, old patterns, and the possibility of discovering a quiet strength within yourself. But remember, you do not have to change your entire life in one day. Healing begins with small moments. One conscious breath. One peaceful thought. One moment in which you choose awareness instead of reaction. One moment in which you remind yourself that the future has not yet arrived, and that you do not need to suffer through tomorrow today. If fear has been a part of your life recently, be gentle with yourself. You are learning. You are growing. And every time you choose patience over panic, faith over doubt, and wisdom over fear, you are taking another step toward inner freedom. Before you leave this video, I want you to ask yourself one simple question: what is one fear that you are ready to release, and what is one peaceful thought you will choose instead? If you feel comfortable sharing, write your answer in the comments. You can simply write, "I choose inner peace over fear," or share in your own words what you are currently learning on your spiritual journey. Your comment may also give strength to another person who is silently struggling with the same fear. If this message brought even a little peace to your heart, gently support this channel by subscribing and joining us for more reflections on meditation, spiritual awakening, inner peace, karma, consciousness, and the teachings inspired by Paramahansa Yogananda. You can also share this video with someone who may need a little courage today. And before you go, tell me in the comments, what would you like to hear in our next video? Would you like us to talk about overthinking, meditation, karma, the power of silence, healing the past, spiritual awakening, dreams, or perhaps the deeper meaning of life and the soul? Your suggestion may become the topic of our next journey together. Until we meet again, remember that you do not have to control every wave of life. Learn to discover the stillness within you. May your mind become calm, may your heart become courageous, may your soul move closer to the divine, and may you walk through every challenge with faith, awareness, and love. Take a deep breath, let go of what you cannot control, and trust that the next step will become clear when you are ready to take it. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening, and may peace remain with you wherever you go. Jai Guru Dev.